During a tense White House press briefing, President Trump's newly appointed press secretary, Karoline Levitt, delivered a powerful rebuttal to a progressive NBC reporter pushing biased narratives about Trump's deportation policies. As the reporter aggressively challenged her, Karoline fired back with undeniable facts, leaving him speechless and the entire room in shock. This explosive confrontation is already making headlines. The White House press room was packed, cameras rolling, lights glaring. The atmosphere was thick with tension, almost palpable. The nation watched intently, waiting for answers. At the podium stood Karoline Levitt, the 26-year-old press secretary to President Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States. She was the youngest person ever to hold this position, but today, she wasn't just defending herself, she was fighting for truth, justice, and the millions of Americans silenced by the media's skewed narratives. Across the room, Daniel Harrington, a seasoned NBC reporter known for his confrontational style, leaned forward, his eyes sharp with hostility. Adjusting his tie, he prepared to corner Karoline. "Miss Levitt," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. "President Trump's new deportation policies have been called cruel and inhumane by immigration advocates. Isn't it true that he's tearing families apart and targeting innocent people simply for existing?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Karoline. She gripped the podium, her knuckles whitening. This was the moment America would see if she could withstand the pressure or crumble under it. Taking a deep breath, she locked eyes with Daniel. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm but cutting, "your question is exactly why Americans no longer trust the mainstream media." Gasps echoed through the room. Daniel stiffened as the tension escalated. Karoline continued, her tone unwavering. "You've accused the president of tearing families apart without context. Let me provide facts your network conveniently ignores." She leaned in slightly, her hands steady on the podium. "Did you report when President Trump's policy stopped a convicted sex offender from illegally re-entering the country? Did you mention how deportations have removed violent gang members, making neighborhoods safer for American families? Yet today, you paint a false picture of cruelty." Daniel's jaw tightened. He was losing ground, and he knew it. Karoline pressed on. "Let me ask you this, Daniel. If a criminal breaks into your home at night, do you let them stay, or do you protect your family?" The room fell silent. Daniel tried to recover, clearing his throat. "Miss Levitt, many undocumented immigrants have lived here for years. Deporting them." Karoline raised a hand, cutting him off. "Undocumented? You mean illegal immigrants, correct?" "Words matter, Daniel." The room shifted. Reporters exchanged uneasy glances. Karoline's voice softened but remained firm. "America has a heart. President Trump has a heart. He's always said good people will be treated fairly, but criminals, those who exploit our system, endanger citizens, and break our laws will be deported." She paused, her next words resonating deeply. "Do you know who really tears families apart, Daniel? The gangs who murder fathers in front of their children, the traffickers who sell young girls into slavery, the cartels flooding our streets with deadly drugs. That's who President Trump is fighting." Daniel's face paled. He had no response. For the first time, the room of hardened journalists fell completely silent. Karoline scanned the room. "I'll take the next question." The silence was deafening. Every journalist sat frozen, their pens still, their voices lost. Daniel Harrington shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His attempt to corner Karoline had backfired spectacularly. She had turned the tables, exposing not only his bias, but the real dangers America faces. Still, he wasn't ready to back down. "Miss Levitt," he said, his voice shaky, "many children have been separated from their parents due to these deportation policies. How can you or President Trump justify such pain?" A murmur rippled through the room. Daniel was playing on emotions, trying to paint Karoline as heartless, but she didn't flinch. She looked directly into the cameras, addressing America, not Daniel. "The real pain, Daniel, is when a mother loses her son to a cartel's gun. The real pain is when a little girl is trafficked across the border by criminals pretending to be her family." Daniel's face went pale. The tension escalated. Karoline continued, her voice steady. "Do you know how many children are used as props by traffickers, Daniel? Do you know how many women are assaulted crossing the border because of the policies your network refuses to report on? She held up a photo. This is Maria. She was 9 years old when she was smuggled into the U.S. by a man claiming to be her father. She was rescued by Border Patrol before she could be sold into a trafficking ring. She turned the page, revealing another photo. This is Officer Martinez, a husband and father of 3. He was gunned down by an illegal immigrant who had been deported twice before. His wife will never hear his voice again. The room felt heavy. Some reporters looked down, avoiding her gaze. Daniel swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling. Caroline leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I want you to look America in the eyes, Daniel, and tell them their safety doesn't matter. Silence. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. Caroline straightened. President Trump will not apologize for protecting American citizens. He will not apologize for standing up to criminals. And neither will I. The room erupted into emotion. Some reporters wept quietly. Others sat frozen, the weight of their complicity crushing them. Daniel lowered his gaze. He had lost not just the argument but the trust of the people watching. Outside the White House, across the nation, a movement was being reborn. Families huddled together, their eyes locked onto their screens. A mother in Texas, who had lost her son to an illegal immigrant's reckless driving, clutched her chest, sobbing. A retired police officer in Chicago wiped away a tear. Even a young journalist in the press room felt his world shifting. Caroline Levit wasn't just answering questions, she was telling the stories that had been buried for too long. At the podium, she took a slow breath. America is built on laws, she said, her voice steady. When we refuse to enforce them, we destroy the very foundation of our country. A single tear rolled down her cheek. America, we hear you. President Trump hears you, and we will never stop fighting for you. The press room erupted into applause. Some reporters stood, clapping through their tears. Daniel Harrington slowly rose to his feet, his face pale. I was wrong, he whispered, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. I was wrong. Caroline's throat tightened. This wasn't just a press briefing, it was a turning point for America. The camera zoomed in, capturing her final words. President Trump promised to fight for you, she said, her voice breaking slightly. And after today, the world knows that fight has only just begun. Millions watching burst into tears. Families embraced, their hearts full of hope. The world had changed in one afternoon, and Caroline Levit had made history.